when you know who you are, people don't like that. They don't know how to manipulate you or to bamboozle you. I speak pretty plainly and I say what I want, what I don't want. We have to do the work ourselves.
That's 100%.
We do the work, the world around us changes.
Welcome to Shaping Freedom. These conversations are about how freedom is actually formed, what we inherit, what stops working, and the choices that change how we live and lead. I'm your host, Lisane Basquiat. There are certain people that you meet in your lifetime, and almost instantly, you know upon meeting the person that they are your person, and that they are a person that is and will be an integral part of your journey. And you, Phill Branch, my repeat guest today, you are that person. We met initially on this podcast where I interviewed you, I think it was a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago. And you are an incredible storyteller. And then we worked together where I wanted to participate in the Baltimore Storytelling Fest that you put on last year. So I came to Baltimore to participate just by being in the room. I mean, I said hello and all that, but for me, it was really about being in the room with you and to see what it was that you created. And meeting you in person, I knew that kind of solidified things. Phill is also an Emmy Award-winning filmmaker and the founder and the creative director of the Baltimore Story Fest, which is what I was referring to. And we've kind of stayed in contact throughout the year. And recently, June 2nd, Phill released a book called The Double Dutch Fuss. It is funny, it's painful, it's generous, deeply revealing, and has so much depth to it. And I knew that that was what was going to be within the pages of this book, where Phill takes us into the life of a young Black boy growing up in Newark, New Jersey, under the watch of a father with very strict ideas about manhood and identity and his model of the world. And this book takes us into the life of the adult that this young boy becomes, who is the Phill Branch that I'm sitting here talking to today. And what the story winds up being is a story about fathers and sons, but it's also about the emotional labor that children sometimes wind up carrying within the family when the family has not done the work to release things. It's a story about being made responsible for the happiness of the adults around you and about keeping secrets that you never agreed to carry. Learning that love can sometimes be withdrawn and can feel conditional, and also about developing identities that help you to survive while also separating you from yourself. So this is a long-winded introduction, a reintroduction, but Phill, welcome to the conversation today. I have so many thoughts that are going through my mind as I'm saying the words, but welcome. We'll start with that.
Thank you for having me. Just going back to what you said a second ago about finding your people. I'm sitting here in my bed in a do-rag because I'm comfortable, and we text and I said, girl, it's just been a week, it's been a month, it's been a year, and it just feels good to feel relaxed and talking to somebody where I'm not performing, and so this feels good.
Yeah. So Phill and I go back and forth all the time, and we find ourselves of late responding to text messages at ridiculous hours of the middle of the night. And we'll often say, like, I know this is ridiculous. It's 3:00 in the morning and we're on opposite coasts while we're doing this. And so we were texting this morning and laughing about how we should just do this both, sitting in bed with a laptop on our laps. And I
I
think
didn't know we were joking.
I was joking because you were like, let's do it in the middle of the night. So because you said the middle of the night, I was like, yes, I'll have a do-rag on. I'll have a bonnet on my head and pajamas and my laptop on my lap. But the time of day for me,
Child.
yeah, but I love this. I love this.
Yeah.
And we're going to have this conversation. So I want to say this. I know that you're in the middle of your tour or you're at some level of your tour, and I'm just going to keep this book up the whole time. And before we start talking about this particular book, what I want to say is buy this book, people. The Double Dutch Fuss by Phill Branch. It is a memoir. And what's so beautiful about this story is that it tells the universal story of acceptance and finding your peace and the hard decisions that we sometimes have to make in life, or that we all have to make in life. So before we get into it, buy the book, get yourself to wherever it is that you buy your books, and get this book on your shelf, in your Kindle, in your hand. It is a read that you want to take, and get the Audible version, because I listened to part of it on Audible. It was my very first Audible, by the way.
Really?
And yes, and the author is the narrator. So it gives you a different level of insight into Phill Branch and who he is. So my question, Phill, is how are you feeling? I know you're doing the book tour. You're talking about the book all over the country. How's it going?
I am feeling quite um, overwhelmed with emotions and thoughts that are all hitting me at the same time. So I'm trying to follow some advice to sit still and take it in. And people are like, don't be in constant motion, but there's still more work to do. So hence me and my do-rag in this bed feeling like this is not work. This is a conversation that feels good. Um, but there is a complexity of feelings from success to um, trying to deeply um, connect with this feeling of completion. I did something is complete, and not feeling like I have to do 100 other things to make it more complete. To be satisfied with the product, with the work, and the interactions that I'm having with people, and not worry so much about if I sold 1,000 books today or negative 20.
There is a completion to it, and it's almost like, and I think I realized this. We had a conversation in person at the American Film Institute. I think it was last week, with Rashid Newsom, and what I captured in that room is that there's the writing of the book and the memoir, and that's very personal between you and those who were participating in the process, and that is complete. And now there's this next chapter of the process that is about processing what happened, right? And what you've now put into the world, and the intimacy of it. Because I would imagine that while you're writing it, it's just you and the page, and you're getting it out. And now it's packaged in this thing that is out in the world and available. And it's I would imagine, a very vulnerable place to be, and also a very powerful place to sit.
It feels incredibly, um, and you're right, powerful to be in a position where I am an author.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not aspiring to be. The books are on shelves to whatever degree they're on shelves. They're available online. So I'm finding myself asking myself new questions about what that means for me as a person who has completed the process of going from wanting to become to becoming. in this very specific way, while I'm also still being evaluated. You know, reviews come in formally from trades, and then they also come in from customers and family, and everybody wants to put their little spin on. And there's also the value where the publisher has to be assessing whether or not this was a valuable investment for them. And even though I want to not be connected to all those discussions, there's no way to not be.
You have to be. Yeah.
You have
Yeah.
to be.
And so you say you're still being evaluated. Are you evaluating yourself?
Yes, I am evaluating whether or not, as a human being, I'm allowing myself to feel um, what's happening, being present in the moment. I'm evaluating whether or not the efforts that I put forward to create this tour, this marketing, is worth it. And what does worth it mean? Right.
Yeah.
You know, and making sure that I'm staying focused on that meaning that I've created for myself and not how other people may see it. And sometimes that's tricky, but mostly I feel free and I feel like I did a really great thing.
Hmm. What was your intention with this book?
My intention was to see whether I could take all these pieces that I've been writing, that I've been thinking about, um, all these feelings that I've had over the last 20, 25 years as a writer, and put them together into something that felt meaningful, that other people could walk away from it and feel that they learned something about themselves using my life as a prompt. I knew I wasn't writing a biography or autobiography that's like, this happened and that happened. So I wanted to tell stories that other people could see themselves in. And so far, the feedback has been that people are seeing themselves in this book. And that has been really powerful. The way people have received me to tell me it feels like we had so much more in common than I thought, you know. Um, and I would have had no clue without this book. So it's been nice to hear from people who I know, and they're telling me like, "Wow, this is pretty incredible. I didn't know that we were like here on these things with these father-son relationships, or how we felt about ourselves based on Hollywood, and from strangers who have been in my DMs telling me their stories, readers, I should say, not strangers, and that's been pretty powerful to me.
Yeah, I think that that is the thing that I like right off the bat. I really felt into how universal a story you were telling, right? And it started, and it's interesting because you're a Moth Grand Slam champion, right? And so this isn't your first go round of telling stories. Like you've been telling stories about your life and about your experiences for quite some time. How, if at all, how is this different?
There was a period where I was getting on stage, telling stories, and it felt like I um, was just showing up for work.
Mm,
Um, I could tell a story almost surgically on stage and know how to get the reaction that I wanted, even with a true story. The way I told it, the way I stood or blinked or stared, and that performance piece is great. But I started going to shows as an audience member, and I started to believe that what I was seeing was lacking some truth. And I wondered if I was straying too far from, and I don't mean like you're telling lies on stage, but if I was straying too far from the truth of why I was telling stories.
Mm.
And I became less interested in hopping on stage for 10 minutes to tell a story every other month because I was going to shows and I was thinking, we all have interesting lives, but not enough for you to be on stage every week with a story. So I decided to pull back and write and sit and to really think about what I wanted to say and what I wanted to do. And now that I've done that, I have this document, this piece, this that I can pull from now when I get back on stage, and it's rooted in something. And I wanted to feel more rooted. I didn't want to feel like I was doing a circuit.
So it's about the performance of your story versus, and maybe not versus because they're not in conflict. It sounds like
No.
there's a process that
Yeah,
reciting your story is more about, there's a performance involved in that, and writing the story is all writing the story. It's all the experience without the performance.
I love the performance.
Mm,
I don't think you should be performing every week.
okay.
True stories. Comedian, yes. But when I started seeing some of my peers on stage every week, I began to wonder how true things were. It's hard to tell a story that pulls an audience in that's based on truth. You got 30 of those stories to pull out your pocket. So I said, "Oh, I don't want to be that."
Hmm.
And I never performed weekly like that, but I was performing a lot and I wasn't getting out of it always what I wanted. And then I started doing things with the moth. And my first show with the moth, like the first big one, not the open mic, the the producer said to me, "I hear what you're saying, but what about this? And what about that?" And she made me think and go write. And it made me love writing for the stage again because it wasn't about the quick 6 minutes. It was about getting to the heart of the story. And you may not have to do that every week. You can maybe get one of those a year. Um, and that felt better to me.
Just like depth over
Yeah.
quantity. Yeah. So in the
Yep.
beginning of this book, what an amazing opening to the book, by the way. And in the
Thank you.
beginning, you get the sense as a reader that you, the character, are kind of in this world that starts to tell you that something's wrong with you. Like from the start, something's just not right about you as a person. And you shared that in the book and kind of shared the different stories around that. Was there a time when you started to realize, oh, well, I'm not, I'm okay, right? Like I'm not the one who's ruined, right? That was there a point, I guess the question I'm asking is, where or when did you start to recognize that the ways that you were being judged and evaluated and assessed were not right in relationship with who you actually are?
I was young when I realized that assessment was off, and also how dare you know, from the people who were assessing me. But I was too young to frame it in a way that I could articulate it. So I've always been the person who could sit back and watch and go, "Mm-hmm, yeah, yeah, look who's talking," you know, and not get too worked up around what was being said and paying attention to the person who was saying it. And I found it, you know, when people didn't have their own lives together and then they wanted to judge me on this thing that they presumed me to be, my brain would be going, saying all kind of things. Look at you, you know, you ain't paid your rent, like all the things that I've heard at the kitchen table.
Mhm.
And I'm thinking, are you talking to me? But you can't say that. And um, there was a point for me where I started to be more of an introvert because I felt like so many people weren't honest with themselves and they didn't feel safe. And I have a small group of friends who really, really know me because they felt safe. They seemed in line with themselves, not so much with me. I could tell they knew who they were. So that I knew that we could have a better relationship in that way.
We talk a lot about the legacy that we want to leave, but what about the one that we're living in right now? I'm Lisane Basquiat. I'm a board-certified NLP expert and a legacy healing strategist. I created Shaping Freedom to help our community move from autopilot to authority. Whether it's through my podcast, the Lounging with Lisane meditations, or our signature candles and journals, I provide the elite tools that you need to heal and to lead your family more effectively. Own your evolution. Visit shapingfreedom.com. That's shapingfreedom.com. I felt the same way as a child, where there were all these adults around me and they were doing all these things and they were supposed to be, the authority and the all knowing and all of that. And I recognized that there was conflict. Some things just did not add up between what was being said and the actions that were happening and the expectations that were being put on the young people around them. And so there was that instant kind of like, I know this world. I know the world of the mind of a person who is living in that, who is an observer. And that's what I got from you as a young child, that your eyes were open, your ears were open. And while you were being judged harshly for who you are, you were fighting back. You had your ways of fighting back. You were not receiving that as your truth. And I think that that's one of the beautiful ways, beautiful showings, I guess, of your resilience as a human being and as your truth, you know who you are, you knew who you were then. So the fight wasn't, am I who they say I am? The fight was, how am I going to live in this world that I've been dropped into as Phill Branch with these people around me, dropped.
We're all just dropped into these houses in neighborhoods, in schools. You gotta survive, all of us. I have that fight every day. What you're talking about around it makes life difficult for me when you know who you are. People don't like that. They don't know how to manipulate you or to bamboozle you. I speak pretty plainly and I say what I want, what I don't want. And even when it's not good, like, we've had talks where you had to tell me, Phil, please stop. We're gonna do whatever. I'm still saying how I feel, but I'm receiving what other people are saying back. It's not trickery. I struggle still because I've had to fight so hard to get to where I am, to feel whole and to feel safe and to feel like I am smart, I am creative, I am a writer, I am all the things that people have a hard time looking at me in the eye when they're doing the basic and I'm going to call it lying, bamboozling. They do with most people, and they try it with me, and then I go, no, that doesn't make sense. And now they don't want to return my emails. They don't want to, and I didn't even cuss them out,
But you
but they
did.
feel seen.
But yeah, I think that's what it is. And I think that that's part of the challenge. And I think that part of the challenge today is there's so much being said, and you're a truth teller. There's a lot being said in the world, and there isn't a lot of truth telling happening, in my opinion. There's a lot of fragility, quite frankly, around truth. And we put it on people. It's easy to talk about white fragility. It's easy to talk about, what other people are doing and all of this and all the gender conversations and the way people treat each other. And if you're not paying attention, you would think there's this big conversation happening. But there's not a lot of truth telling that's happening in the dialogue amongst the collective. And so when you have a person who sees the truth, who speaks the truth, it can make a person feel uncomfortable. And they're not deliberately trying to do anything, I don't think. They're just uncomfortable with that level of truth.
And they might not even know what truth is because they've been lying so much.
Mm-hmm.
When we did the talk at the American Film Institute, and I looked over to Billy and I said, cut the camera because we're going to talk. The things that I said, which were not that scandalous, but they're truths that nobody talks about. And my thing is, we're going to be in a room full of creatives who are trying to learn from the wisdom at the front of this room. We do a disservice when we don't talk. And I'm not slamming anybody when I tell my experiences. I'm letting you know what happened so that way when you come up behind me or if we're together, we can work together. But you need to know what it really is. And sometimes that not only scares the systems, it scares my peers because they keep the secret because they want the next deal. I want the deal too, but I want it after I've said what the hell I got to say. Because I don't want you to treat me bad at this next project. So I have to find people who don't feel scary around me, because that makes me feel unsafe, that you'll sell me out. So I have found other people in this space who we talk and they appreciate the candor and 'cause we learn from each other's journeys. We stumble a lot in this business because people don't tell us what they're really going through. And I say I feel glamorous some days. Like this feels glamorous to me talking to you and my do rag, but I'm struggling to piece this tour together. Um, Publishing houses don't support tours. Books go on tour. I don't work.
Thank you for saying that. And you have to do it. You are the tour. You are the getting on the plane, getting in the car, going from city to city, preparing your mind to have the conversations, to be able to talk about, find the things to talk about to sell the book.
Let's talk truth. So my book has been institutionally supported. HarperCollins did me a solid. My book is beautiful. My editor was the bomb. I love Amistad. And during that process of creating that book, I also know the industry and I understood because I listened to people who've been there before me. Don't wait for the publishing house to do what used to happen in the 90s. You got to be prepared to do it for yourself. And knowing that, I planned for a year and a half while I was writing the book, to go on tour. I had about 4 tour dates a year before the book was done, invitations to major libraries and things like that because I had that information. I had an editor who said to me, if you want this book to live for a while, use your resources, ask. We're going to do our part, but understand the industry today, what it is different. So because I was equipped, I don't feel any uh, ill towards supporting the tour. I understand the economics of publishing today, but it's difficult. And I think there's a way to say, I appreciate everything that's been happened for me. And this part of the machine is why I'm in the bed right now because I'm tired and I got a few days off. But I put together 19 tour dates and I think 3 college course adoptions as a debut author. And there's publicity, there's marketing. I make the flyers, hotel, all of it. But when most people see it, they see the Instagram post with people like, you know, I like to give that, and everybody doesn't, and people don't need to know every nitty gritty. But in industry conversations and if asked, I share what it really is because I want people to not only know, but maybe we can work together. Maybe there's some alignment. I've partnered with so many amazing people because we were honest about where we were. We weren't pretending that we were on a tour sponsored by Live Nation. We kept it real, and that has helped me by being honest and partnering and talking to bookstores honestly about what I want and how I wanted to support them. They've become really big fans of me, and I work with them. This is hard work. Yeah,
I would imagine. And you have a whole life. You're a parent, you have a whole life on top
yeah,
of this,
yeah,
And I think that's one of the challenges today, or one of the shifts that a lot of us are getting accustomed to is that you have to market yourself.
yes. So to separate what I'm about to say from this exact experience, I'll just say broadly that marketing yourself piece, there's usefulness to it. Somebody who met me 6 months ago couldn't have done what we experienced in the AFI. That had to come from me. They couldn't have put me together with James R. Hardy in New York, in Harlem. That's me. But they could have put me in some bookstores. They could have done, some. I think there's an over reliance on the talent to do the jobs of what is actually a skilled profession.
I agree.
Marketing is a profession. Public relations is a profession for a reason. It is not posting. It is not reels. It's understanding audience. It's understanding human beings. Color is understanding font. It's understanding what a black and white picture means versus a color picture. It's understanding what part of the day to announce, and that gets lost when when it's solely focused on posting, and we pretend like someone other than the same 60 people who see our posts are seeing these posts. And when I turn around as truth telling Phil and say, you're the executive director of marketing schmarketing or whatever it is, what is your strategy? And there isn't one. Then I'm being looked at crazy because I asked the person who has the title, what do you do with what is your job? And I think this over reliance on artists in general, from music to film, whatever, to
Entrepreneurs, that is entrepreneurs who are in a business because they want to do a certain thing. And now entrepreneurs are having to learn marketing, to learn what to do and how to do it. And I think that that's, there's a freedom to it that's fun.
Yes.
And there's also there needs to be a meeting in the middle between the marketing, those folks with marketing subject matter expertise, and the entrepreneurs, the entertainers, the talent, whatever that talent is. And I think that that's part of the challenge, that people who decide that they want to go make cookies are now having to also learn how to do reels to sell the cookies.
And sometimes it undercuts the product.
It can.
So I'm selling this book. So now I got to go get two people in front of my driveway and jump double dutch holes in the book,
And
buy
get
the
someone
double
to
dutch
record it.
press.
And get somebody to record it. And you haven't double dutched in I don't know how long, but now you got to go out and double
Yeah.
dutch.
Coming soon,
Yes.
Enough.
I know. I want to go into the book though. There's one thing I want to ask you about
go.
this book, or I want to talk about. Let me tell you. So early in the book, y'all, okay, there's a situation where Phil's father kisses another woman. Okay. You said it in the book. I'm not telling it. You said it in the book.
You're right.
Right? Kisses another woman. And Phill, I told y'all he was a fighter. Phill tells his mom, he goes and tells his mother. And when you told your mother, my heart jumped. I'm like, oh, Lord, what is this man going to do to this little boy?
Right.
And what I'm laughing about it, and that whole situation, that whole scene, what it brought up and what you talked about, like talk about truth telling. You talked about, or what you shared and revealed was the ways that men get together and have this whole thing going on that is not right, or that is not in integrity for the relationships that they're in. And then you, as a little boy, you're in the middle of observing all these adult men around you who are in the conversation of men's business. And then you get in trouble for saying something that happened that's a betrayal. And so there's a couple of things in there. One is about the ways that some, and this is not everyone, the ways that some men learn what masculinity is, the ways that they're taught what masculinity is about and what loyalty is about, and about truth telling. And the last thing I'll throw out there before I ask you to respond to this, what was really interesting was that you also talked about, in contrast, how the aunties would not sit around being okay with the women in their circles behaving in that way, behaving with betrayal toward their families, that the aunties would not have you just sitting up around talking about your nails being done. The aunties would sit down and say, what are you doing? You have a family, you have children, you're going to tear, whatever those things are. And so that entire thing, like we could spend 2 hours talking just about that. And you told the truth in a very courageous way. And I also got the impression that it wasn't like a strategy. You were just like, wait a minute, y'all, let's not act like daddy was kissing another woman at 2:00 this afternoon. Like, can you go back to that? Like, what was that for you? And were you scared? I was scared for you.
I knew I had to say something. I actually remember that. I had to say something. My mother was my best friend, and I love my mama. So she was going to get told. And I think why that moment stayed with me for so long and is still with me, I think it was the first time that I really realized how that I could be discarded for not playing by the rules of being a good boy. I had messed up on the man training. You know, since this book has come out, I've heard from so many men who have seen their daddies who are married with their girlfriends, have had to go to their girlfriends' houses and say nothing. But no one ever said, you better not tell mama. No one's ever said that. They just knew and they were terrified and they felt terrible because they loved their mother. And I've heard from at least 6 people who have shared that experience. And that makes me think about how many of us grew up like that, and how many people believe that that's being a man, understanding to cover and you get to do whatever you want. And there were so many little things like that growing up that I often had this conflict about, like, I don't want to be that, but I think biologically who I'm assigned to be. This is going to happen. I'm going to be this person, and I don't want to be this person. And as I got older, I started to realize how much men got away with that. That you could be in a family, and the uncles could bring a girlfriend over, but there's a wife, and nobody's gonna say nothing. They're gonna get talked about later. But a woman would never, in my family, would never be able to walk up in there with a man that wasn't their husband. So you start to notice this behavior and this acceptance. And I started to question, like, all these women have been hurt by men who have done this to them, but then they're letting their sons do it in their house, their nephews, and stop it. Stop the behavior.
That's right. Don't pour into it. Don't pour into that.
Stop the behavior.
There was another point in the book where you were trying, it was almost like you were tap dancing to figure out, like, how do I get accepted? Like, what do I have to do? Like, who do I have to be in order to be okay, be seen as okay? And you went down this route of, maybe if I'm super smart, maybe if I'm super smart, then, I will be okay. And I think a lot of people do that. A lot of children do that. Adults do it too, in relationships sometimes, where it's like, if I can change myself, then it'll change how this adult, this parent, this sister, this brother, this lover, this husband, this wife, treats me. For how long did you carry that? Because I know there was a moment you talked about, maybe if I'm like super, super smart, but for how long did you actually carry that belief?
I carried the belief that I had to be so special. I had to be number one for people to like me, into adulthood, well into adulthood, which is why it feels freeing to be tired right now from work, but not from the burnout of trying to prove. It's a different kind of feeling. So it starts with school. I'm in the gifted and talented program, and I skip a grade, and then I can't think, I was second in my class in middle school, whatever. But then I got to high school, and I was like, I didn't want to be Doogie Howser. I wanted to just feel like one of the kids, and I started to perform less academically in high school. I was a heavy reader. I could absorb the information. I was less interested in A's. I just wanted to be, and I was and that was still me trying to figure things out. And then I carried that into college. Wasn't concerned about them grades. I passed. I was concerned about being left alone, being normal, and maybe I can live my different world dreams here at Hampton if I make myself a superstar. And then I did, you know. Um, but that had its own price. Then I carried that to LA where I won an Oscar by the time I'm 23, in a production company. And but how it manifests is that I'm the president of the NABJ chapter in LA and I'm 22, 23. Why? I'm not been in the field, but I knew I could win that election and it meant something. And some of that crept back up with the book because I started just charts. And I was like, ooh, like right now I'm number one in a category on Amazon. But at least now I know that's a really great accomplishment. But the real accomplishment is getting the book done and sort of being on the road and connecting with readers. So I don't feel that number one badge is the thing that makes the book or me successful.
Not at all.
Um,
And
but it's cool to have.
yeah, it also is like, okay, you did something and there's
Yeah.
the acknowledgement
Right.
that you wrote something that resonates so strongly with so many different people. And that is a huge thing. I wanted to ask you, and again, I encourage you all, buy this book. I wanted to ask you a question about, so you're a parent today, right? You've done a lot of work and it's clear that you have been a truth teller to yourself. You've been a truth teller to other people. You have been, you read a room, right? You read a room and you read a room well, 2020. And I know your children are relatively young and you're getting to that place where there's a place in a time in our lives as parents where whether we've processed our childhood or not, you then start raising your children and it's almost like you're processing your childhood in parallel with the ages that you are guiding your children through. How are you, Phill, positioning yourself as a parent, having had the background that you had, having gone through the things that you've gone through?
Today, I'm giving myself more grace. When they were babies, I was so worried about breaking them.
Yeah.
And they were bubble wrapped, and the stroller had hydraulics because I didn't want their spines. Like it was a mess. It was a whole because I wanted them to be okay so badly. And I remember I was parked outside the daycare. I was teaching at Howard. It took like an hour, like about hour and a half to get to work. I dropped them off. I'm sitting in the minivan and I'm crying because I don't know them people in that daycare, what they're doing to my babies. And what I had done a couple times is I've gone back in and said, oh, I don't have to teach today, and taking them back home.
You know what?
I was lying. And I go home, and I just take them home, and then my husband would come and just roll his eyes. And he was like, we pay money for this and go to work. And so this day I'm in the parking lot trying to think of what I'm going to say to go get my kids from these evil women. And the woman comes out, knocks on the window, and she says, Phill, go to work. Because this is expensive and you're going to need your job to pay for this.
She's like, you're messing up for everybody.
Yeah, they're okay. So I went from that and making fresh salmon and all that in the morning. So they had it for lunch because it had to be freshly made, not reheated. I read some article to now being okay with a skinned knee and not thinking I could have done something to prevent that. Being proud when my kids are direct and clear about their boundaries. Don't touch my hair. Um, would you like some of this pie? No, thank you. Like no parts. And, oh, your kids don't eat hot dogs? No, they don't want them. And no further explanation. And I love that they have that. And I didn't. I love that they run freely. I love that they swim in the summer. I love that they just are kids and they play how they want to play. And we work really hard to give them that. And that makes all of this worth it. And when I got to the end of the book, it dawned on me that much of my relationship with them, in terms of like giving them those freedoms and that safety in this house, in this neighborhood, um, was a direct response to my life.
Because that's what happens. I raised my children thinking about what I didn't have, right? I was raised in the house without my mom. My father was very uh, well-meaning, and also, and I loved my father, love my father. I still do. But there were some things about him that were like, hey, like I'm a human being here, right? He would just say anything, and he was very proud of the fact that he would say anything, but he would, like, he could cut you with his words. He would just say any old thing. Um, and I also understood him as a human being. And so what I realized is that when I went off to raise my children, I did a lot of my approach to raising my children was in contrast to, it was like the things I didn't have, I wanted to make sure my kids had, right? I did not grow up with my mother in the house every day. And so I wound up having to create parenting, my model of parenting from scratch in many ways. And then there came a point, and I think it was when my son Joseph was a teenager, when I realized that on some level I was raising children based on something that had nothing to do with them. I wanted to make sure, and I still do, I want to make sure my kids had voice and different things, but I was doing it from the perspective of my experience, an experience that they had never had. And so that was where I started to say, oh, well, that's interesting because they didn't have that experience. And so I'm literally putting it into them versus taking a moment to stop to say, okay, fresh slate. What do I want for my children? What kind of a mom do I want to be versus almost like trying to make up for something that had nothing at all to do with them. It wasn't their experience. And that's how we do that, from generation to generation. I had this experience of, not being able to jump double dutch and having that teacher who was wrong as heck, by the way. How are you going to call the parents and tell on you? Like that's, I don't know. I was like, that lady or man, whoever it was, didn't like that. Crazy. But it's like that situation happens, and then you have children and you're like, y'all going to jump double dutch. And it has nothing to do with them. And it has nothing to do with them, right? Because double dutch is
They don't even
not,
know about
they
that.
don't even know about it. But they become the people that are going to carry the torch for the fact that you didn't get to jump double dutch.
And there's also another switch that I think where I am now is I want them to explore the world without me right behind them, because they know they're loved. They know that we'll help them the best way we can. But in that bubble wrap, in that protection, in that giving and creating this Pleasantville existence, you run the risk of having kids who can't do.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
So we've just started making sure that our kids know how to work the washing machine. They know how to walk from here to the pool because that's why we moved here. Why am I walking with you? It's safe. We can, ride the bike to school. That's why we moved here. There's a trail that you take with all the other kids. We want you to be able to figure out things. To get a flat tire, let's figure out what happens. So I'm glad that we've still provided this, but I'm also able to recognize that I was given so much as a child. The ability to think, figure out, solve problems, and that can't all be given. None of it can be given to a child. They have to go out into the world and figure that. So they can come on back home and be comfortable and all that stuff. But I want them to be able to figure things out and they're going to be okay.
Bravo to your family for doing that. I had this moment with my son, Joseph's grown now, and he was in his early 20s and he was struggling with something. And I was watching him struggle because as I mentioned before, I was like, this kid is not going to fall. Like, I'm going to be there because I wanted him to know that I had his back. Like, I wanted my children to know that they had a parent who had their back, no matter what, 100%, unconditionally. And in doing that with the best of intentions, we had this moment, my son and I, where we're sitting in the living room at my house in New Jersey. And I'm just kind of sitting there and I'm sitting on a chair and he's sitting on the ottoman a few feet away from me and we're chit-chatting. And I knew he was struggling with something. And I looked at him and I said, I know you're struggling with this. And every part of me wants to help you. I also know that I can't, that this is something you have to do yourself because I know that you can. And my son, Phill, looks at me and he says, thank you. Because what that means is you believe that I can. And it was like a mind F for me in a moment. And like my head snapped back and my eyes, I started to cry and I said, I never realized that you saw what I was doing to try to help you as some thought or belief that you could not help yourself. That wasn't my intention. And that moment, that little moment that we had, that little conversation where we cleared up what the truth was in it, changed the trajectory for him. Because he translated me bubble wrapping him into, you cannot take care, you can't take care of yourself. You need someone to come in and do that.
Yeah, in that moment, he was like, she knows I can figure this out. She believes in me.
Yes. And that was like the furthest thing from what I would ever want him to think or believe that I believed about him. But that's how he translated it. So I think that, us parents, especially those of us who are attempting to release things in our past that we don't want to pour into our children, there also has to be this moment where we kind of work that out of ourselves so that our children get the benefit of a blank canvas.
I want to say this. This feels really good to sit and talk and sort of go from sort of the complexities of dads and the silence of women about their men and just being a parent. And where we landed with this whole thing about parents is the point of my book, in the sense that we have to do the work ourselves.
That's 100%.
We do the work, the world around us changes.
One person does the work, your entire family. Don't worry about what Auntie Sue and Uncle Bob are doing. You do the work and everything around you changes. Phill Branch, this is a masterpiece. This book, The Double Dutch Fuss, and y'all read this book and you will understand what the fuss is about. encounter a story about a man who is struggling, and I'm referring to your father now, and a boy who's struggling under the struggle of his father, and the relationship that you all had and the relationship that you built with yourself, having come through that experience. It is an incredible, incredible memoir. You have to read this book, listen to it on Audible. And Phill, this is a conversation. I feel very excited about the conversation that you have opened up with this book, because this is what we need to be talking about. We need to be talking about the ways that we're showing up in our families. We need to talk about the judgments that we're putting on the backs and shoulders of our children, who are not, should not, do not have to carry that weight. And we need to talk about truth telling, and
Yes.
and also about the ability for parents to be more accountable and more willing to be vulnerable to their own journey, because we're not perfect, right?
Right.
So thank you so much for
Thank you.
sitting and chit-chatting with me. As
This was great.
always, it's always great. I love you, Phill Branch. I
I love you
appreciate you
back.
so much. And I really appreciate the ways that you are contributing to the world, you know, the work that you do to contribute to the world in telling the stories that you tell with truth, with grace, with courage, with integrity, with accountability. That matters. It matters so much. So thank you for that. Thank you for coming
Thank
back
you.
to chit chat with me.
Thank you.
And thank you all for listening so much. As always, please like and share. And if you know someone who's in this and who needs to be brought into this conversation, share this conversation with them, please. And Phill, I will speak with you in like 20 minutes on text.
Yes. All right.
Okay,
Talk to you
take care. Bye.
later.